It was 3:17 in the morning, and the rain in Charleston was falling so hard it made the streetlights look like they were melting. I stood across King Street with my coat soaked through, my hair sticking to my face, and a waterproof envelope clenched so tightly in my hand that my fingers had gone numb. Across the road, behind tall frosted windows and warm gold lettering, my younger sister's luxury wellness boutique glowed like a shrine. Luna and Sage. The name looked soft, expensive, almost holy. Inside that building were shelves of hand-poured candles, imported crystals, herbal oils, linen curtains, and all the pretty little lies my sister had sold to rich women who wanted peace in a glass bottle. But I knew the truth. That store had not been built on healing. It had been built on theft. 5 years earlier, my parents sold the only thing my grandmother Evelyn had ever left me, a gold pocket watch that belonged to my great-grandfather, and they used the money to fund Sienna's dream. They sold my memory, my inheritance, and the last physical proof that someone in my family had ever chosen me. And now, 5 years later, I stood in the rain with a 4 to 5 day notice to vacate in my hand, because the one thing my family never saw coming was this: the building under my sister's feet belonged to me. Before I tell you how I became the landlord of the sister who stole my future, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. And if you have ever been the quiet one in your family, the one everyone expected to sacrifice, stay with me, because this story is for you. My name is Marina, and for most of my life, my family treated me like a backup plan. My younger sister, Sienna, was the golden child. She was delicate when she failed, gifted when she lied, misunderstood when she hurt people, and creative whenever she wasted money. My mother, Vivian, always said Sienna needed more support because she was sensitive. My father, Richard, said family had to help family, but in our house, that sentence had only one meaning: Marina had to give and Sienna had to receive. I paid for my own classes. I worked weekends. I bought my own car. I fixed my own problems. Sienna cried, and money appeared. Sienna changed dreams, and my parents called it bravery. Sienna failed, and I was told to be patient. 4 years, I swallowed it. I told myself that being the responsible daughter meant being the invisible daughter. Then, in September of 2019, I came home from a late shift and found the small walnut box on my dresser open. I knew something was wrong before I touched it. The room felt different, like someone had walked through a sacred place with muddy shoes. The velvet lining was empty. The gold pocket watch was gone. That watch had belonged to my great-grandfather, then to my grandmother Evelyn, and before she died, she pressed it into my hand and said, "Never let anyone convince you that silence means you have no value." I ran downstairs and found my mother in the kitchen, drinking coffee like it was any normal morning. My father stood near the sink, pretending to read something on his phone. I asked where the watch was. Vivian did not even look guilty. She just sighed and said, "Marina, don't make this dramatic. It was just an old watch. Just an old watch." Those 4 words changed the shape of my life. Richard had taken it to an auction house in Atlanta and sold it for $18,700. Every cent went to Sienna, so she could lease a charming historic storefront on King Street and open Luna and Sage, a boutique for candles, oils, and spiritual wellness, funded by the one thing that had been mine. When I looked at my father, he would not meet my eyes. When I looked at my mother, she looked annoyed that I was ruining her morning. And when Sienna posted a photo 2 days later in front of her new store, smiling under the caption, "Dreams begin when family believes in you," something inside me went completely still. I did not scream. I did not break a plate. I did not beg them to understand. I went upstairs, packed 2 suitcases, and left Charleston before sunrise. For 5 years, I disappeared from their lives. I moved to Savannah, Georgia, and took a job at a historic luxury hotel. I started as an event coordinator, the person carrying clipboards and fixing floral disasters 10 minutes before million-dollar weddings. Then I became the person wealthy clients asked for by name. I learned contracts. I learned crisis management. I learned how to smile while someone tried to blame me for a problem they created. I learned that calm people are often mistaken for weak people, and that mistake can be very useful. I changed my phone number. I locked my social media. I ignored Thanksgiving invitations, birthday messages, and my mother's carefully worded emails about forgiveness. They called me cold, ungrateful, bitter. But I was not bitter. I was becoming free. Then, in November of 2024, a man named Gideon Vale walked into my hotel office carrying the same walnut box that once held my great-grandfather's watch. Gideon was tall, silver-haired, and dressed like a man who had spent his whole life reading documents that ruined powerful people. He introduced himself as my grandmother Evelyn's estate attorney. I almost laughed, because as far as I knew, there was no estate left. My parents had made sure of that. Gideon placed the old box on my desk and said, "Your grandmother expected this might happen." My throat tightened. I opened the lid. The watch was not inside. Instead, I found an iron key ring, a folded deed, a sealed letter, and beneath a false wooden bottom, a small external drive. Gideon watched me carefully as I unfolded the deed. The words blurred for a second, then sharpened. It was a commercial property deed for a 3-story historic building in Charleston's King Street Historic District. Estimated value, $3.4 million. At first, I only stared at the numbers. Then I saw the address. My mouth went dry. I knew that address. Everyone in my family knew that address. It was Luna and Sage, my sister's boutique. The store my parents had funded with my stolen watch was sitting inside a building my grandmother had secretly left to me. Gideon explained everything. Evelyn had known who Richard and Vivian were long before I did. She knew my father had a history of bending signatures, hiding debts, and treating family money like a private emergency fund. She knew my mother protected him as long as the lies kept her lifestyle intact. So Evelyn created a trust with a trigger. The pocket watch was deliberately left in a less secure part of the estate, clearly designated for me. If my parents respected that, the larger trust would mature when I turned 33. But if they sold it, the public auction record would serve as proof that they had violated her wishes. When that watch sold for $18,700, the trust activated early, and the King Street building passed into my control. My grandmother had not left me a watch. She had left me a trap. That night, I logged into the property management portal Gideon gave me. I pulled up the tenant file for Luna and Sage. The numbers told me what Sienna's Instagram never did. Her lease had expired 6 months earlier. She had never signed a renewal. She was on a month-to-month holdover agreement. She was behind on rent, penalties, insurance reimbursements, and legal fees. Total outstanding balance, $96,000. I sat there in the blue light of my laptop, reading the ledger again and again. My parents had stolen from me to build Sienna's dream. Now that dream was legally standing on my floor, behind on my rent, and vulnerable to a simple 45-day notice. I could have acted immediately. I could have sent the notice that same night. But I had learned something in hospitality: never interrupt people while they are revealing who they truly are. So I waited. I did not have to wait long. 3 days later, my mother called from a number I did not recognize. I answered without speaking. Vivian's voice floated through the phone, soft and sweet in the way it always became when she wanted something. Marina, sweetheart, we miss you. This silence has gone on long enough. I looked out the window of my apartment in Savannah and said, "Why are you calling?" There was a pause. Then came the truth. Sienna was in trouble. A heartless real estate company was threatening to remove Luna and Sage from King Street. The landlord was demanding money. Sienna had poured her soul into that boutique. The family had invested so much. And since I had a stable career, Vivian wanted me to take out a personal loan to help cover Sienna's temporary cash flow issue. She never mentioned the watch. Never apologized. Never asked if I was okay. She simply reached across 5 years of silence and tried to use me as a bank account. I told her I could not help. Her sweetness vanished instantly. "You always were selfish when it came to your sister," she said, and hung up. I stared at the silent phone and felt nothing. Not sadness. Not anger. Just clarity. They had not changed. They had only run out of money. 2 days after that, Naomi Brooks called me. Naomi was my sister-in-law, married to my older brother Caleb, and she worked in financial risk control at a major Charleston bank. Unlike the rest of my family, Naomi had always seen Richard clearly. She asked to meet in person. When I arrived at a quiet cafe halfway between Savannah and Charleston, she slid a folder across the table. Inside was a digital power of attorney bearing my name. My signature sat at the bottom, neat and false. Richard had used an old scan of my ID and a remote electronic notary to submit paperwork, giving himself authority over my savings. Then he attempted to transfer $115,000 from my account into Luna and Sage's operating account. For a moment, the cafe noise disappeared. My father had not just asked for help. He had tried to steal my identity. Naomi had blocked the transfer before the money moved. She expected me to panic. Instead, I asked if Richard knew the transfer had been stopped. She said no. In his portal, it still appeared under review. I told her to leave it that way. Naomi leaned back and studied me. "You want him to think the money is still coming?" I nodded. "I want him waiting for salvation that will never arrive. Desperate people make mistakes. I wanted Richard desperate." The next week, he gave me exactly what I needed. Richard and Vivian drove to Savannah and walked straight into the lobby of my hotel during afternoon check-in, when guests, executives, and staff were everywhere. Vivian started crying before she reached me. Richard carried a folder of loan documents and dropped it at my feet like a command. He told me to sign as guarantor on a private loan for Sienna. When I said no, he stepped close enough that only I could hear him and whispered, "If you do not help us, I will file a civil suit claiming you manipulated your grandmother before she died. I will tell everyone you exploited a confused old woman to steal our family property. Let's see how long your precious hotel keeps you after that." There it was. The knife? He was threatening my reputation, because he knew I had spent 10 years building it. In luxury hospitality, reputation is currency. Even a false accusation can stain you. I looked at him, then called security. My parents were escorted out, while Vivian's fake sobs turned into real rage. That night, I went home and opened the walnut box again. I kept hearing Gideon's words, "Your grandmother expected this." The box felt heavier than it should. I ran my fingers along the inside and found a seam beneath the velvet. With a letter opener, I lifted the false bottom. There was the external drive, and beneath it, a note in Evelyn's handwriting: "When they try to make you the villain, let the truth speak." I plugged the drive into my laptop. One video file appeared. I pressed play. My grandmother's face filled the screen. She looked older than I remembered, but her eyes were sharp, her posture straight, her voice clear. "My name is Evelyn Mercer," she said. "I am of sound mind, and I am recording this statement freely." Then she dismantled my father piece by piece. She named the dates when Richard had forged her signature. She named the bank accounts. She named the withdrawals. She said Vivian knew and chose silence, because it benefited her. She said Sienna had been raised to confuse attention with love and entitlement with talent. Then she said my name. "Marina has never asked me for $1. She is disciplined, honest, and stronger than this family deserves. The King Street property belongs to her. If Richard attempts to accuse her of coercion, this recording shall serve as my testimony." When the video ended, I sat in silence. My father had threatened to destroy me with a lie. My grandmother had left me the truth with a timestamp. A week later, Vivian invited me to a family reconciliation dinner at an expensive seafood restaurant in Charleston. I brought Naomi with me. My mother's face tightened when she saw her. Richard did not bother with warmth. He slid a contract across the table and said they knew I controlled the King Street building. A private investigator had found my name connected to the holding company. The contract was framed as a generous solution. I would transfer the building to Sienna's company. In return, I would receive 7% of Luna and Sage's future profits. 7% of a business that owed me $96,000. Vivian called it a peace offering. Sienna called it my chance to prove I still cared about family. I did not laugh. I picked up the contract and pretended to read. Then I said, 7% is insulting. If you want me to transfer a $3.4 million property, I want 22% equity and full access to Luna and Sage's financial records before I decide. Richard and Vivian exchanged a look they thought I did not see. Relief. They thought I was negotiating. They thought greed had brought me to the table, because greed was the only language they understood. The next morning, Sienna sent me the financials. Naomi and I spent 6 hours going through them. Luna and Sage was not a struggling boutique with temporary cash flow problems. It was a sinkhole wrapped in linen and lavender. Sienna owed vendors for candles, oils, packaging, interior design, and unpaid local taxes. She had 3 maxed-out business credit cards. She had classified employees incorrectly to avoid obligations. She had used business funds for designer clothes, spa weekends, personal branding shoots, and influencer dinners. Her brand sold peace while creating debt everywhere it touched. I realized then that eviction alone would not be enough. If I quietly removed her, Sienna would turn herself into a victim, raise money online, and start again with another landlord, another supplier, another lie. She needed to be exposed in front of the exact people she was trying to fool. Then she did the work for me. When the final warning arrived, Sienna did not call an attorney. She turned on a ring light. She posted a tearful video accusing a greedy, faceless landlord of destroying a female-owned Charleston business. She wore no makeup, or at least makeup designed to look like no makeup. Her voice broke at all the right moments. She called Luna and Sage a sanctuary. She said powerful people wanted to silence her. The video spread fast. But Sienna made one mistake. She hinted too much. She mentioned that the landlord was connected to a hotel executive in Savannah. She described my age, my career, and enough personal details for strangers to find me. By the next morning, my work email was full of hate. My social media, which I barely used, was flooded with accusations. People called me cruel, jealous, soulless. The hotel placed me on administrative leave while corporate reviewed the situation. For 1 hour, I almost broke. I almost posted everything. The deed. The debt. The forged power of attorney. The video of Evelyn. But Naomi texted me 3 words: hold the line. So I held it. I let Sienna climb higher on her tower of lies. 2 days later, she announced a grand reopening and investor gala at Luna and Sage. She invited wellness influencers, local business writers, wealthy Charleston donors, and private investors. She framed it as a community stand against corporate greed. In reality, she needed cash before the locks changed. What she did not know was that Gideon had already scheduled the sheriff and locksmith for 8 o'clock the morning after the gala. On Thursday evening, I dressed in a black tailored suit, pulled my hair back, placed Evelyn's drive in my pocket, and put the bank fraud documents and tenant ledger into a folder. Gideon met me outside Luna and Sage. Naomi stood on my other side. Through the glass, I saw candles glowing, champagne moving through the crowd, Sienna smiling like a woman already saved. The security guard tried to stop me. Gideon showed him the ownership documents. The guard stepped aside. I walked into the store my family had built with my stolen inheritance, and the room changed before I said a word. Vivian saw me first. Her champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Sienna turned, and the smile fell off her face. Richard moved toward me, but Naomi stepped in his path. I walked to the small platform, near the back where Sienna had planned to pitch her fake resurrection. I picked up the microphone and tapped it twice. The room went quiet. "Good evening," I said. "My name is Marina Cole. Some of you may know me from the social media campaign my sister launched this week. You were told that Luna and Sage is being attacked by a faceless corporate landlord. That is not true. I am the legal owner of this building." Murmurs spread through the room. Sienna whispered, "Don't do this." I continued. Luna and Sage owes $96,000 in unpaid rent, penalties, and legal fees. Its lease expired 6 months ago. Any money invested tonight will not fund expansion, inventory, or growth. It will go directly toward debt. A few investors lowered their glasses. One man near the front took a step backward. Richard shoved past Naomi and shouted that I was lying. He said I had manipulated my grandmother. He said I was unstable, jealous, and trying to steal what belonged to the family. I waited until he finished. Then I took the drive from my pocket and connected it to the presentation system. Evelyn's face appeared on the wall behind me. Her voice filled the boutique. Clear. Steady. Unforgiving. She stated that she was of sound mind. She described Richard's forged signatures, Vivian's complicity, Sienna's entitlement, and my rightful inheritance. She said the King Street property was mine. She said if Richard tried to accuse me, this video was her answer. When the video ended, nobody moved. Richard looked like his bones had been removed. Vivian sat down as if her legs had failed. Sienna began to cry, but this time the tears had no audience. Investors walked out. Influencers deleted posts while still standing in the room. The small reporters who came to write about a brave entrepreneur now had a much bigger story. I took the final notice from my folder and handed it to Sienna. "You have 11 hours, I said quietly. At 8 tomorrow morning, law enforcement will oversee the lock change. Anything left inside will be held against the outstanding commercial debt." Then I walked out. I did not yell. I did not insult her. I did not apologize. The next morning, King Street was quiet. At 8 o'clock, 2 officers arrived with a locksmith. Sienna stood outside in an expensive coat, her eyes swollen, a cold coffee cup in her hand. She signed the paperwork, because there was nothing else left to do. The locksmith drilled out the old lock. The sound echoed down the sidewalk like a verdict. A new brass lock went in. Luna and Sage was over. Naomi finalized the bank report that same day. Richard's forged power of attorney was rejected and escalated for investigation. His accounts and Vivian's accounts were frozen. Their credit cards stopped working. Their mortgage, already strained by years of bad decisions, collapsed under review. Richard eventually accepted a plea agreement for financial fraud and received 4 years of probation, along with restrictions on managing commercial accounts. Vivian lost the Charleston house she had spent years pretending proved she was respectable. Sienna lost her store, her investors, her online sympathy, and eventually most of the vendors sued her for unpaid bills. She took a job managing shifts at a tourist gift shop, folding sweatshirts, and smiling at customers, who had no idea she once sold $90 candles under the language of healing. Gideon filed a civil claim for the $96,000 Luna and Sage owed the property company. A forgotten investment account in Richard's name was located and legally levied. The money came back into my business account. It was not revenge. It was accounting. The hotel in Savannah called me 2 weeks later. Corporate had completed its review. The news had turned. My name had been cleared. They offered an apology, a raise, and a regional director position. 5 years earlier, I would have cried from gratitude. This time, I thanked them and resigned. I was done managing other people's empires. I had my own building now. I renovated Luna and Sage from the inside out. The pastel walls disappeared. The crystal displays were removed. The artificial lavender scent faded. In their place came dark wood desks, glass partitions, leather chairs, and clean brass signage. I turned the first floor into the headquarters of Mercer House Hospitality Group, named after my grandmother Evelyn Mercer. The second floor became client meeting rooms. The third became my private office overlooking King Street. 8 months later, I sat at my desk with the walnut box beside me. The watch was gone, and I never got it back. But the box no longer felt empty. It held a different kind of inheritance now. Proof that silence can survive betrayal. Proof that boundaries can become freedom. Proof that the quiet daughter was never weak. She was simply waiting until she had the keys. Naomi visited me that afternoon. She had been promoted for exposing a major fraud risk. We drank coffee in the office that used to be my sister's boutique, and for the first time in years, I felt no fear when my phone lit up. My parents could not reach me. Sienna could not use me. The law stood between us like a locked door. Sometimes people tell you that family is forever, because they want forever access to your money, your labor, your forgiveness, and your silence. But blood does not give anyone the right to steal your future. Forgiveness does not require you to reopen a door someone used to rob you. And peace does not always come from reconciliation. Sometimes peace comes from watching the lock turn, hearing the click, and knowing that, finally, they are on the other side. My family thought they had sold an old watch to buy Sienna a future. What they really sold was their last place in mine. And when Luna and Sage closed for the final time, I did not lose a mother, a father, or a sister. I lost the illusion that they had ever truly been my family.